What's up, everybody? Coast to Coast Live coming at you. I'm Joey Powell for Inside Carolina. We are brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. Glad everybody could make us as part of their evening. If you're not watching this live, we are doing it live for a change. We did the post game the other night just to fill in for Tommy because that man does shows every day and then twice on some days. So gave Tommy a break Monday night and did our show live, and it turned out really well. And we were shocked that our schedules aligned so that we were able to do it live this evening. So here we are, wanting to deliver the content that you, our loyal listeners and subscribers, are ready to hear. And we appreciate you being a part of the show. Excuse me. Shout out to Sherrell McMillan and Sean Moran, who have joined me. And I'm sure Sherrell will notify me here in a second that I've already cleared my throat once on the air. Big party foul on my part. But hey, man, we're not used to doing these live. So doing something a little different and want to make sure that we're giving you guys content you want to hear. Resetting what we've done since the last time we did a show. You know, we did the post game Monday night, talked about UNC kind of just waking up in the second half against Wake Forest. And then this Saturday, another game in Tallahassee on the road against a team that at the time was second in the ACC. You can put stock in that or not. The standings are what the standings are. Sean, I keep seeing a team that is finding more ways to surprise us and more ways to win games. We talked about it a little off the air. I don't know that this defense looks smothering. It doesn't remind me as like 40 Minutes of Hell from Nolan Richardson or any of the Cincinnati teams when Huggy Bear was there. But it's something about this team that's still holding opponents under 70 and still giving up one shot and clearing the glass. What are you seeing from this squad that's surprising you? And we'll start defensively.
Defensively, I don't think they bring to mind a particular style that you say, oh, this was a great defense, whether it was some of those you mentioned or even what all the ACC fans are used to seeing from Tony Bennett and UVA and maybe the pain that you feel going up against it. But at the same time, it's so solid that you're not seeing the breakdowns. You're not seeing, I mean, even going back to Connecticut, which once is a very tough offense to guard, but the open layups, the easy shots, even the wide open 3-pointers, you're still seeing them on occasion, but you're seeing, to a man, each defender, each possession playing extremely hard to keep their man in front of them. And if there is a pick and roll, either getting through it or the help side is stepping up and the rotations are for the most part clean and crisp. I think one of the weaknesses has always been rim protection, and you have Armando Bacot, who is playing the best he's ever played at the rim. I think a really high block percentage, and then you have a guy like Harrison Ingram making a key block against Florida State in the final minutes as well. So I think you really have everybody playing as a team, and the guys that we probably all talked about throughout the summer. How is RJ going to guard? How is Elliot Cadeau going to guard? And they've been once again keeping their man in front of them and being aggressive defensively. So all in all, it's everybody playing as a team and not making mistakes and making things frustrating and not easy for the opponent.
Sherrell, we talked about multiple times as the season, before the season started and as the season came along, we were worried about North Carolina's height defensively on the perimeter. RJ is, I'm not sure he's 6 foot. I know what he's listed as. Elliot Cadeau is probably 6'1". But we were worried about the size those guys may be handicapped by as the season came along. Are you surprised they're defending as well as they are? And I go back to, there was one of the plays against Wake Forest where Elliot Cadeau basically just stood his man up and poked the ball away and triggered a break that way. RJ Davis, again, not necessarily a lengthy guy that's going to get his hands in a lot of passing lanes, but he's absolutely up in guys' shorts now. Were you surprised to see this backcourt evolving to be as good of a defensive tandem as they've been?
For sure, and I think I've been as wrong about that as anyone because everything that I think we saw the first month of the season screamed that this was going to be an issue all year, all the way back to Villanova, where it was just a kind of ISO bully ball, back them down, back to the strategy of Pittsburgh from previous years. So it looked like that was going to be how teams attacked UNC. And I think the biggest thing, honestly, and someone else in the chat said it, shout out to 828 Lawson, but Armando has become a valid, super, I don't want to say super, but a really good rim protector. When Jalen Washington's in the game, he has his faults as far as lateral movement and and helping off of screens and switching. But there's one thing you can count on is that he's going to be able to swat something. And same thing with Jalen Withers. So they have more rim protection than I think they've had in the past. I think that helps a ton. And to your point about it not looking like a smothering defense, honestly, I think it's a bit of our eyes tricking us because the guards are diminutive, so to speak. There's not the super athletic, rangy person you typically associate with lockdown
Right.
defense. You usually think of guys from Arkansas and Alabama who can jump out of the gym, who are muscular, who are just solid athletes. Those are the kind of people that you, in your mind, are like, oh, that's a good defender. When you look at RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau, you're like, oh, those are offensive players. So I think they've done a great job of just being solid. Not you don't have to be great. You don't have to be an amazing defender. You just have to be solid. And they're guarding as a team. That's really the biggest thing. Guarding as a team, and then the fact that when they do funnel guys into the middle, Armando's done a great job, whether it's switching off and staying with guards. He pulled a Kevin Love against Steph Curry in the finals there against Florida State on a couple possessions where he stepped out and the guard really couldn't get by him and forced a
Couldn't
bad
do
shot.
anything.
Yeah, so to me, that's the biggest thing is Armando's rim protection, and then again, the fact that they're playing together as a team and the defense is moving and they're talking.
Appreciate everybody watching us live. This is Coast to Coast Podcast for InsideCarolina.com. Sherrell, I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to let you back out of the conversation just yet because I think one of the things, and we talked about it in the post game on Saturday with Tommy and John Bauman. One of the things I think is helping this squad is you've got a player like Seth Trimble who is demanding playing time with his ability to defend, his ability to get to the rim, and he's good for a couple of baskets each game. His demand and him forcing the staff to play him is giving UNC an ability to rest RJ Davis and rest Elliot Cadeau, and I think that matters in end of game situation. Do you feel like that's something that can be relied upon as the year goes on? And also, do you feel like it's somewhat contagious when you've got Seth pushing those guys for time when it's really he's just coming in and triggering because he's going to be a defensive dog?
I think defense is very similar to moving the ball and the ball not sticking. Is that when you see other people doing it, it makes you want to do it more. And I think a lot of that begins with Cormac Ryan on the defensive side. The fact that while again he doesn't look like what you think a great defender looks like, but he is a really good defender. He's able to fight through screens. He kind of stays in front of his man most of the time. So I think that's one. And then two, yes, I mean Seth Trimble, no disrespect to Davis and Cadeau, but he's a better defender than them. And so I think when they are able to come out of the game and you get Seth, and not to toot our own horns, but we talked about it in the preseason, when you kind of sick Seth on him like a junkyard dog and say, get up in him, make him frustrated, make him not comfortable, then that, it allows, I think, for RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau to get that break that helps their offense, but it also makes them want to guard too. So the things that they're doing are all infectious. It permeates through the locker room, whatever word or verb you want to use. I think is what you're seeing with UNC, from Cadeau's passing to Armando's role acceptance to Cormac Ryan's vocal leadership. It all is working together.
Sean, how can somebody who's watching the game that maybe is not used to watching team defense, what are some things they can look for? I mean, Sherrell alluded to Armando Bacot's ability now to become a more efficient rim protector. You talk about the fact that he's become a great or a very good defender. What are some things people can watch in the flow of a game to see what team defense looks like?
Well, I think just saying on the Armando front, I know this was called out on Twitter a while ago, but if you think there's going to be a mismatch, you most likely think, hey, it's getting a quick guard on Armando, most likely. And what you're seeing when he's in these spot up situations or these defensive situations, he's been playing like one of the best players in the country. So, for a guy his size and his strength, to be keeping guys in front of him, challenging the shots. But Joey, from a team defense, I think once again, it's stop trying to watch all five guys on the floor, but from a man-to-man, once the guy gets the ball, how is he being defended? And on that first pass that's being made, once there's an attack, how is UNC? I feel in years past, they've always been slow on the rotations on the help side, and all of a sudden you do 2, 3, 4 passes, and you're going to have a wide open shot. I think you're you're not seeing that because they're not letting it get to those 3-4 passes, but they're able to keep their man in front of them, and then they're able to rotate quickly and cut everything off. So it's not really continuity that's going on. And then also in transition, I think that's been a big key, especially from the larger perspective of just scoring more points than the opposition when they're playing so well from a transition perspective of challenging shots, but also keeping people out and making it tough to defend. All that I think leads into things that are watchable. So I would say in transition, just watching how UNC has been getting back on defense, but then from the man-to-man perspective, just watching how each individual is really not getting beat, and if they are, for the most part, there's been some good help side and good rotations that have been made.
Joey, I
One-
wanted to add too, Joey, when you talk about Armando on the switches, I think what people realize, you don't have to guard your man on a switch for 13 seconds or 15 seconds. Usually it's towards the end of the shot clock, or it's a situation where they're not going to dribble the shot clock out and try to go ISO the entire possession. So on the switches, all you need from Armando is 4 or 5 good seconds of defense and to get the ball out of the guard's hands, and then the defense can reset. So I think he's done a good job of just surviving those 4 or 5 seconds and allowing everything to start over.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be one of the things the coaches are telling them is like, go defend for 5 seconds. Anybody can defend for 5 seconds, right? We're not asking you to play a full shot clock. And then back to what Sean was talking about, if folks want to see a good example of what good help defense looks like, you're rotating over, dropping down, recognition when somebody's about to get beat. One of the biggest plays of the game was Harrison Ingram's block at the end. Florida State, as they're wont to do because they're so rangy and so athletic, are willing to try to attack on the dribble UNC's smaller guards. UNC was backpedaling fairly well, but Harrison Ingram just drops across the lane and knocks a ball out of the sky. And I think that's just the recognition that Sean was pointing to a second ago, that North Carolina has not had in the past, of just understanding where do you need to be if XYZ breaks down. Let's stay with Bacot a second, Sean. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think this goes back to the larger theme of team chemistry and getting guys in that are high IQ basketball players. Because I think one that just helps from when everybody's on the court, but then I think it permeates, across the other players. So I think you've seen guys talking more. I think you've seen guys now willing to buy in and really playing together, whether that's offensively or defensively. So I think that in a large part has helped this team get to where they are, just that change in demeanor as well.
So let's stay with the Bacot conversation a second, because I think that was something that was really, I guess, talked a lot about both during and after the game, because we've seen a couple of times where Armando Bacot has not had amazing stats. I would tend to point towards what Sean's talking about of how he's been able to be such a better on the ball defender. He's been somewhat of a rim protector, at least at a more advanced pace than he ever has at any point in his career. But something that Leonard Hamilton said after the game, I think is really important for folks to notice here, and I want to get Sherrell to comment on it. Leonard Hamilton said, we tried to take Bacot away, and they were running multiple guys at him, but they were fronting him for most of the first half, which I don't remember seeing a lot this year. So they were fronting him with some really athletic players, and that was hard for him to get his offense established. Sherrell, do you feel like this is just Armando being unselfish, or is it one of these things where he's still going to be valuable when the time's needed? It's just they're winning without him. What do you fall on that conversation?
Yeah, I think the team has changed, like we've talked about in the past. It's definitely not a team where he is the primary number one option no matter what. I think there were several times in previous years where we'd get on here and say, you've got to give Armando Bacot the ball. He should have a touch on every possession. I think the way RJ Davis has played, the way Elliot Cadeau has played, and Harrison Ingram to some degree, because he has played like a post player for a lot of the season, that has changed kind of the math a little bit. I think the question I might have for Leonard Hamilton is, does he have an outdated scouting report? Because, anything where RJ Davis isn't number one on the scouting report right now, I question the scout, honestly, because he does so much for UNC. with the way he's able to score, especially the way he's able to score in the clutch. It makes me wonder, just is it just something you say because Armando's been around for so long that it's like, oh, you have to stop Armando because you've had to stop him for the last 4 years, or is it they really feel that he still makes everything go? And I don't have an answer for that. But to answer your actual question, Joey, I think there'll come a time, maybe it'll be Tuesday, maybe it'll be Saturday, where we'll see kind of vintage Armando Bacot. I don't need to go through the history of North Carolina seniors like we've had in the past on this podcast who have struggled, frankly, their final season for a lot of it, but kind of pulled it through towards the end. If you remember, everybody loves Kennedy Meeks now. He's a hometown hero. He's a legend. But during a lot of that season, most of the people who probably are listening to this were like, Tony Bradley's got to play more. You got to pull Kennedy. He's not pulling his weight. He's not playing well. But Roy Williams stuck with him, and eventually it paid off. Marcus Page, same thing. He's on the staff at UNC now. His senior year was not great. He had that game against Florida State was awesome, but he was shooting 29-30% for a large majority of the year, and it kind of finally clicked towards the end of February and into March. So I would say offensively, just give Bacot some time; it'll come back because the more that Cadeau is able to drive, the more that defenses are going to collapse on him, and the more Bacot's going to get just wide open dunks.
Love that. I think it's a great synopsis, Sherrell. And also, if you look at Armando Bacot's skill set, it's not like perimeter shooting. It's not like it can go away in its mechanics or anything like that. I think it's literally just, is he getting the ball in places to start his offense? Is he getting the ball early in the shot clock and those sort of situations? One of the things I think is incredibly fun. Go ahead, Sherrell.
Now, Sean looked like he wanted to jump in like 4 times. So I was going to say, let him cook if he wants to cook.
No, no, no. I agree. I mean, I think we'll get to this week where Armando, I think, can have a big influence on Saturday. I know against Florida State, he's often struggled more so due to their size and length, but being guarded by DeAndre Green, Florida State was giving up a lot this time around, and perhaps with their length on the guards, they thought, hey, we're going to be able to slow them down that way. But I think we're going to see more than 4 shot attempts. I think for everything to be clicking, you need Armando. You don't need him, getting 20, but I think you're going to need him getting more than 4 shot attempts and finding ways to get him just some quick and easier looks around the basket. But agree with Sherrell that some of those will come with Cadeau. Right now he's getting to the basket, especially right-handed at will, so he's able to finish. But I could see a lot of those, hopefully some lobs or dump offs coming his way as well.
Definitely. Something that we saw against Florida State that we haven't seen before, and I don't want to make this game specifically about Florida State, but I want to take something that we saw and I want to forecast forward with it. I guess that's what forecast means, is looking forward. But anyway, bear with me. Looking at the perimeter shooting that North Carolina had, they got multiple 3-pointers from Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan in the game against Florida State. I don't know when the last time that happened was, but when I see that transpire in the flow of UNC's offense, I immediately think that that's also another one of those found money situations that could really affect their postseason run. Sean, do you agree, or am I on the Chiba when I say that?
No, and I think those shots did come, especially Cormac to really start the second half, came at a big time where I think in years past or in general it wouldn't have been a surprise. You get down 8 in the second half at Florida State, and I mean that could just go downhill pretty quick, which we have seen in the past at Florida State. But just the general shooting came up in big spots. Even the shot on the fast break against Wake, was a big one as well. I think we've talked about Ingram regressing to the mean, given that he's still shooting above 40%, but he's definitely trended down in ACC play. So seeing him hit 3 out of 4 was big, especially early on. But I do think Cormac Ryan is one of those keys to unlocking what is that offensive potential, or at least getting to a top tier ACC offense. And right now he's still shooting, in the low 30s, but he's been playing, I think, been shooting better. Sure, there's some times where he's still forced the issue a little bit, but I think he's been shooting a little easier, getting some more lift. So I, I think if he can be that 35% plus 3-point shooter, that in itself will unlock a lot because now RJ's been playing at a All American level. Elliot Cadeau's picking it up, and if you can get consistency at a baseline from Ingram and Ryan, knowing there might be some upside, I think that's really going to be the difference between catching, not getting upset, when it matters most.
Ryan's at
Well, we're-
30% for the season, like exactly 30%. He's 34-100 from three so far.
while we're talking about perimeter shooting, Sherrell, I think some folks are, as fans are wont to do, pick nits, look for cracks in anything. Some folks are saying Elliot Cadeau's jump shot needs to come along. I don't disagree with that, but are you at the place where you feel like it's an issue yet, or is it just letting perfect get in the way of really good?
Right now, I think what's going to happen is he's had like 3 or 4 games where he's just kind of gotten to the rim and no one's been able to stop him. At some point, there's going to be a coach who has a few days for a scout is going to say, "Oh, well, we're not going to let this happen," and just going to completely back off. They're going to be in the paint pretty much, and that can be, I get the idea, but I think that's still not the best idea against Cadeau because he still has that 2 dribble, 3 or 4 feet inside the 3-point line pull up. He hasn't hit it much, but it's you can tell it's a rhythm shot for him. It's something that he practices a lot. So I really think that's all he needs. Honestly, if he doesn't hit threes but once every few games, I don't think that's a huge issue for UNC.
I feel like that's enough.
I think he just needs to be willing to take that 2-step dribble pull up. And as long as he does that, I think he'll be fine.
I think when I was and I could see it come Saturday against Duke, given how they played UNC last year, of just completely ignoring Leaky and Pete Nance and just saying, hey, we're going right in the paint, beat us that way. So I could see them probably being that first team that is really going to play off almost. I've kind of been waiting on that Taco Fall, Trey Jones situation that we've seen in years past, but I think
that's a hell of a pull, bro.
I mean, that was probably one of those biggest, changes or matchups that you can remember. But I think with Cadeau, right now in a catch and shoot opportunity, he is in the 3rd percentile in Division I. So that, but at the same time, he puts so much pressure, and it's not like Leaky Black where, hey, he might catch and shoot, he might try to, but he's gonna have the ball in his hands, and if you're playing off of him, he's still gonna attack you. And now you're backed up a few feet, so you're almost flat-footed. So he's still gonna catch you or put you off guard, and at the same time be able to dish it. So the fact that he does put so much pressure and the fact that he is such a good passer, I think negates the lack of shooting. I mean, if he was shooting even just average, I mean, we probably would not be seeing him around next year if there is an opportunity. But I could see Duke trying to do something pretty different than what we've seen the past few games. Florida State had the length to try to do something different. It didn't work. But I could see Saturday being something where we see it.
Yeah, he's only made 4. He's only made 4 this season, and the last one was against Charleston Southern.
It's been a minute. So I that jumps out at me as something I want to get to a little bit later in the show. Bear with me, I was making notes. Guys, I want to run this down, and I mentioned it briefly on Saturday, but I want to hear y'all's insight into it. If I'm looking at a game, and I'm telling you guys about a game that just went down, if I say that North Carolina trailed in field goal percentage 44-41, they gave up 45% from the 3. The opponent hit 9 3-pointers. They had 17 turnovers and went through some severe scoring droughts. And then also Armando Bacot went 2 for 4 from the field, 1 for 2 from the line, and finished with 5 points. What would you think I'm telling you about this game? What would you think the big issue would be from that game? And then what do you think the outcome would have been? Sean, take it first since Sherrell was on mute.
I mean, I'll start. I mean, I think the outcome would be you just go by those stats alone and nothing else, and you think for sure UNC lost that game. But I think not answer your first question, but I do think it was UNC's ability to go on those two 7-0 runs pretty quickly in the second half, and like a minute 10, a minute 20 on each time. So the fact that they do have that ability, especially with RJ Davis being one of the best scorers in America, and you mix around what everybody else is doing and starting to gel together. I think that those two quick runs, 14 points right there, definitely made up the difference. And even though there was some long stretches of UNC struggling to get good looks, struggling to score, between the defense and some of those quick runs, they were able to really hold everything off. Even though it got pretty dicey at the end, up two, and those two possessions, open three, and then a turnover. But they continue to make big plays.
All right, Sherrell, jump on it.
The 17 turnovers would have been a huge surprise because of the fact that Elliot Cadeau and RJ Davis are UNC starting guards. So would have been a surprise there. And then, yeah, for sure, a loss because that's just a lot to withstand. We've seen the 3-point numbers. They've been historically great, whether you believe it's luck or good defense or a combination of the two. They have been historically great at keeping teams from hitting threes. So you would think that, okay, it's caught up with them. They gave up the 9 threes. They gave up the 17 turnovers. But then I would ask you the question back. I would say, well, did they win the rebounding battle? Did they have a lot of offensive rebounds? Did they get to the free throw line? And if you would answer those, I might would have said, okay, well, could have gone either way, because I think that is becoming UNC's formula to win games. I mean, it again, if you look at advanced statistics and pretty much everything, UNC is very good at getting to the free throw line, especially in conference play. They are very good at offensive rebounding, especially in conference play, where they're number one in both. So that gives you an advantage there because you're getting more shots typically than your opponent. So you're getting more opportunities. And then, like we said, they're playing defense at a level that a UNC team hasn't in some time. So when you combine all that, I would have said, okay, yeah, more than likely lost, but there probably was a path to victory. And I think spinning it forward, that is maybe the model for Carolina is timely shooting, continued great defense, and crashing the boards.
I didn't expect you to go full Kornacki early on me with the path to victory, but here it is. Sean, you had something else you want to throw in?
Yeah, not maybe more of a side tangent. I mean, I think the frustrating thing, because that was the first win against Florida State was a big win given the situation coming off the win against Tennessee, being down 14 points. So that was a letdown game of sorts. They came back, and then this one, big win against Wake Forest at home, going on the road to Florida State, and improved Florida State. So it was a big win. But when you look at where they're ranked in the 70s or 80s, it's frustrating. And part of that's on Florida State for some of those early season losses. But I know on the message boards, I've seen a lot about the net and the rankings, and I think that's
don't make me censor you.
No, well, I think that's the frustrating part is if we were doing like an ACC SEC challenge right now, like you could put Florida State against probably anybody, especially at home. But right now, all they're going to be getting is ACC teams, and they don't have that opportunity to showcase. So I think that's the frustrating thing, is that was a big win, and it's probably won't get the recognition it deserves, or other people beating Florida State. So that was a very talented team that UNC beat yesterday.
They look largely different with Primo Spears on that roster. I'll say that. That dude gives them a spark that they clearly did not have the first time they played North Carolina earlier this season. And so it's got to be nice for Leonard Hamilton to be able to just pull something like that out of his shopping bag, while he's trying to, keep the corners clean in Amsterdam. Something else that would have been great for Leonard Hamilton is if he were able to swing by Johnny T-shirt and get some gear when he was up here in December. I mean, if you think about it, they got nice weather in Florida, maybe not in Tallahassee all the time, but in Florida. And we've always remarked at how Leonard Hamilton doesn't age. So he could probably just get him some of the clothes that the youth wear that you can find over there at Johnny T-shirt on East Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. And yeah, he can look like the young kids. He can walk around with his, Florida State bag over his shoulder with his UNC hat on and look at somebody in the face and say, "How do you do, fellow kids?" And it would work because he's Leonard Hamilton. He doesn't age, and he's rocking his new hat that he got from Johnny T-shirt. We appreciate Johnny T-shirt sponsoring the show. We want you guys to appreciate him as well. They're huge supporters of Inside Carolina, and Tar Heels alumni, locally owned and operated. Use your 10% on the premium message boards. Get that extra discount off top of their great prices and selection. We appreciate them. I hope you will too. We'll let the national guys drop an ad in here right now if you're listening to us. And if you're watching us, stick around because I've got something you want to hear. Fellas, I took a call earlier today, and it was from some people out on the street, like letting me know what's going on, what the vibe is.
Uh-oh, it's back.
You know what they told me? They told me they needed no cap or sus. The streets are talking, and the streets are saying we want no cap or sus back. And so it is without further ado that I bring to you, our audience, either watching us live here on Inside Carolina's YouTube channel or listening to us in your podcast feed, the latest edition of the world's most rapidly growing, most popular, hippest with everybody in the world, new edition of No Cap or Sus. You guys know how it works. I will make a statement about UNC basketball, and Sherrell McMillan and Sean Moran will state that it is either no cap, meaning that it's true, or they will say that it's sus, which means that they're not really sure on that one. Boys, you ready to play?
Ready to play this unexpected surprise. I'm wondering if we'll have a disagreement of any sorts. Unlike
there we go. Giving the people what we want. Giving the people what we want. So I'm going to take this kind of to where Sherrell was going before we took a break a second ago. With North Carolina playing a good defense, owning the glass, getting offensive rebounds and getting to the free throw line, that sounds a lot like an old Dean Smith team. Sherrell, are you seeing this North Carolina team as a Dean Smith team, or is this more of something else? No cap or sus, this team looks like a vintage Dean Smith basketball team.
I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say no cap, but for the reason being, I schematically, I would have to ask someone more versed in exactly all the things that Coach Smith did. However, it has to be because Hubert Davis has said many times of basically how he created the UNC program in the image of all the great people who came before him. And while Roy Williams was a great mentor for him and he coached under him for 9 years, I still think, the Coach Smith impact is very strong in Coach Davis because he played for him for 4 years. Most people look up to Coach Smith as kind of an idol / hero. I would say the things that are working in the way that Coach Smith's teams worked is the rebounding, of course. I think the using of the bench, I will say timely using of the bench, because I do think it's a misnomer that Coach Smith was out here with 12 guys playing and they all played 15 minutes a game and it was utopia and everybody was happy. Not quite the way it worked. Go back to that 94 season and people are still upset about how the bench was used. However, I will say that he always used the bench timely. He knew when to put in a Henrik Rodel. He knew when to make sure that Scott Williams got some rest. He knew when Vince had to sit out for a little bit. So I think you're seeing for Hubert, a third-year coach, someone who's growing into the role and taking some of the things that he's seen before. I think bench usage is definitely a place where pretty much everyone complained over the last couple of years, and that he's really improved. Not so much that everyone's playing equal amounts, but they're all being used at a time when they should be used like specialists almost to accomplish a certain goal.
With clear roles. Sean, this team looks like a Dean Smith team. No cap or sus?
Tough one. I will go no cap, but at the same time, I'm going to say in terms of who it reminds me of, it's more the 06 team, obviously under Roy Williams. They finished 10th in KenPom. Obviously, UNC is higher than that right now, but with how they played down the stretch and also how they played together, really I think not a lot was expected coming off the 05 championship team. There were expectations, obviously, for this team ranked in the 20s, but I think with how they've been playing together, I'd say it's reminding me of the 06 team. But in terms of what Sherrell mentioned in terms of some of the substitution patterns and other things, there are some similarities, but it's also interesting. This is the third year for Hubert Davis, and now trying to see just how he's been running this team compared to the last two.
Appreciate that, boys. Let me address
Let me
somebody.
let me add one thing.
Yeah.
As far as team comparisons, I was thinking this the other day. I need to go back and look at it. This is totally off the cuff. This is not me doing research or anything. It's just me thinking about it. I think it reminds me a little bit of Roy's early 2000s teams because of the multiple point guards, because of the at times dominant big, because of the kind of do everything wing/4 that they had. With they had Aaron Miles and Kirk Heinrich. That was with Collison and a couple other guys. So it reminds me of that. Yeah, Drew Gooden. Obviously, Harrison Ingram isn't quite Drew Gooden. He's playing pretty good. He's playing like Drew Gooden played in the NBA. But just the makeup of the team reminds me of that a little bit. Again, haven't checked stats, haven't looked at numbers, but I was just thinking about that the other day.
So I want to address somebody in the chat. We're not saying that Hubert doesn't get credit for this team. We're not saying it's Dean Smith's team. We're saying this team has a lot of the similar traits, or at least I'm posing to these guys. Does this team have a lot of similar traits that some of the vintage Dean Smith teams has? It's definitely not saying this is Hubert should not get credit for this. I've been a huge proponent, especially when he's been criticized, at least on this show and from Inside Carolina. I think he's deserving of all the flowers this year and what he's been able to do in finding goal with his lineups and the way he's manipulated other teams, the way he's spammed teams with his play calling, all of that. Next question on No Cap or Sus. Harrison Ingram reminds you of George Lynch. Now, I share this because that is something that I felt myself coming to the understanding of this past week, and I've been trying to put my finger on it, but I'd seen it somewhere else, and it hit me with his stat line this weekend. I think it may have just been because of the wrist wrap, the wrist tape, or the come across for that big block at the end of the game. But he really does remind me of the way George Lynch played. Similar stature, all that stuff. And I have let Mr. Lynch know about my assertion there. So he's aware of the comp. I'm throwing it to you guys. No cap or sus. Sean, you go first. And I know you hate player comps too.
I'm going to go sus. I mean, I think there is a lot of similarities, but it's probably maybe a month ago I was watching the game against Michigan, the championship game, and I feel Lynch was still a little more bruising and powerful, even though obviously Ingram is tearing it up on the boards. And you look at him and he doesn't look anything like what he did in high school, from a physicality standpoint. But even when you see George Lynch these days, he is just a massive, massive dude. And I think he's more of like, the old school power forward that can be versatile, where Ingram still, we haven't seen it as much, but from the ball handling and passing. So I would say in terms of stats and what Ingram has been doing on the boards, there's, in my mind, some similarities, but I would put it as sus from a comparison in my mind.
All right, Sherrell, no cap or sus. Harrison Ingram reminds you of George Lynch.
I'm going to say no cap. The only reason I'm going to say that, I don't like disagreeing with Sean. I just looked up George Lynch's
This might be the first time.
Yeah, I just looked up George Lynch's senior year numbers, and they're not that dissimilar. I think you're trying to compare two players who played in completely different eras. Like if you go back, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. If you go back and watch a game from 1993, it's almost irrecognizable as far as like how basketball is played today. So let's get that out of the way. Two, averaging almost 10 rebounds a game, which George Lynch did his senior year with Eric Montross on the court, and the way Carolina played back then is pretty impressive. That's like Ingram averaging 13 now, I would say. So there's that. They rebound well. Both rebound well. They both score, close to the basket, and you don't necessarily want them going ISO or anything. So I think those are the similarities on the court. I think what people are seeing are the intangible similarities, and that makes them think that they are, congruent players. With Lynch, it was always like he was going to do whatever you needed. We joked in the offseason about there's going to be a stat at the end of the year about Ingram and how he had, all these numbers and 7 different stats. And George Lynch was that same type of player. If you needed a block, he would get you a block. If you needed a steal, he would get you a steal. If you needed an and one, he'd get you that. If you needed a rebound, he'd get you that. Sometimes he'd bring the ball up the court when Derek Phelps was nursing one of his 75 injuries that he sustained, his junior and senior years. So I think that's what people are saying. Maybe not them being really comparable as like exact players, but the intangible part of it. And I would say from the intangible part, then yeah, because they are definitely leaders on the team. Ingram is a little more fiery. I think Lynch, even though he was a leader, was more reserved. But I think what they bring and what they're doing, pretty similar.
I think some of George's teammates would probably argue with you on the George Lynch being reserved part, but I get your point.
Okay,
He's not as gregarious. Not as
yeah,
gregarious as Harrison is.
Reserved publicly. Let's put it that way.
Yes, he is not he's not the one that will always jump up to the microphone when it's time to give an interview, which we know that to be true about Harrison Ingram. All right, boys, appreciate you allowing me to bring back No Cap or Sus the way the people wanted. Like I said, when you get phone calls from folks that know what's popping, and they ask you, "Hey, bring back No Cap or Sus," you got to do it. We're a show of the people, if nothing else. I do want to get to some of the questions. One of the reasons I thought we could do this tonight is to take some questions from the audience. So shout out to 300 folks that are here. I'll go ahead and start digging through to some of these, and I'm going to pepper you guys with them so that you can give us some real honest answers here. This is less of a question, but it's something I do think is worth talking about. Sherrell, Mongo Slade made a comment about Seth needing to figure out what he's going to do before he jumps at the rim. I don't think he's that far off. What's your response to that, Sherrell McMillan?
Yeah, he's probably disappointed, especially in that layup. Who knows what happens if UNC goes up 21-8? Instead, he misses the layup. They have another lost possession. Florida State hits a three, and the game is back on. I think they'll just tell him to dunk the ball. Just dunk it. It's pretty simple. And he's one of the few people that has been blessed with the ability to do so fairly easily. So just do it. Yeah, I think that's a learning lesson from him for him.
You could almost see him as his reaction from the first one, the Florida State game. Just he knew he should have punched it, and I think he just got caught in no man's land. And none of us, I will speak for y'all wholeheartedly and say this: none of the three of us understand what it's like to be that athletic and to be able to get up in the air and not know what to do when you get there. I mean, not a problem I've ever experienced before. Sean, this question is from Ben, and it sounds like something right up your alley. Is UNC's offensive efficiency becoming a concern? They're 73rd in the country per Bartorvik since January the 1st.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if it was one of the last two podcasts you brought up the question, what is anything that can slow them down? And it's definitely that offensive efficiency that we've been seeing, especially whether it's 73rd in the country or looking at the ACC only stats. It's not concerning, but I think that is hopefully where they have the room to grow and get up into that more at least the upper echelon of the ACC with RJ Davis and others. And I think with Cadeau starting to get there and with Cormac Ryan and hopefully Ingram being able to be a little more consistent, that can come up there. Because when you're looking at the points per possession throughout the ACC play, it hasn't been great, but they've been getting wins. And I think as we look at this next stretch of games, Georgia Tech on the road, Duke, but then you have Miami and some other, I think, of the more talented ACC teams. That's going to, they can go through scoring slumps, but they're going to have to definitely pick it up because it is, in my mind, a concern and something that you don't want to see falter come March, when at the same time, here's one of those teams that is now hitting 40% from three.
Peeling on that thread a little bit more, from Brian Neal, how much of the ISO offense against Florida State was adjusting to their length and the way they defended versus North Carolina slipping back into relying on their guards and playing a little bit hero ball? There was some of that late in the game, so I think I know what Brian's referring to. Sean, I want to ask you the same thing. How much of it was what do you think? It was North Carolina taking what was given, or do you think it was old habits rearing their heads again?
No, when I was looking at this in the morning, so I can't remember exactly, but when you looked at isolation plays, I think there was 21 that were recorded in this game, which was extremely above any other game, and especially in that second half, So was it a product of Florida State switching and kind of pushing that out there, or at the same time, not every team is going to have the size and the length of Florida State where they can do that effectively. So I think that led to some of the, slowing it down. The ball wasn't moving. You're watching, trying to go one on one. I think it was more dictated due to Florida State and their style of defense versus UNC trying to be the hero, but at the same time, other teams try to do that so that it slows UNC down and it gets them into a one-on-one matchup, perhaps. But at the same time, with RJ Davis and how well he's playing, you probably don't want to pick that poison. But I would say it was more FSU with their length and size dictating how that turned out.
Thank you, sir. From Chase Simon, Sherrell, what's preventing, Jalen Washington from getting more playing time? Why not give him a 4-minute segment each half? Is he that much of a liability on defense?
We mentioned it earlier. I don't think he's a total liability on defense. I think it's when he's put into screens and put on the perimeter and is forced to guard laterally that it becomes an issue. Around the rim, I think he's pretty good as far as blocking shots and making sure he secures the defensive rebound. So a part of it is, like always, is that Armando Bacot at this point is just a better player. So you want to give Washington some minutes to help Bacot rest. But at the same time, if you overexpose Washington, that could hurt the team. So it is a balance. And I think we were talking about whether this is like a Coach Smith's team or not. I think the way he's using Jalen Washington, the way he's using Jalen Withers definitely shows that it kind of is because, again, Washington comes in to give Armando a break, but he really reads and sees how Washington is playing. And if he's, doing well or, he hasn't given up anything, he'll let him stay in the game a couple of extra minutes. So I think that's the main thing is just that lateral lateral ability on defense.
Next question, and again, shout out to everybody for getting these good questions here. I appreciate it. Sean, what about our end of game slow play trying to protect our lead? It does lead to some empty possessions. So I think the question, and I'll do this for Rob. Sorry, Rob, if I'm taking too much creative liberty here. How do you feel about UNC taking the air out of the ball like they did at the end of the game against Wake Forest? And they did go ISO a couple of times. I don't know if it were things breaking down, but there were times where you could see that, all right, this is going to be in RJ Davis's hands. Full stop. End of sentence. What are your thoughts on that, Sean?
It's hard because you do want to work clock, but I think whether it's watching football or basketball, I always hate it when the team ahead kind of takes their foot off and they start trying to whether it's the prevent defense or just run, whatever it is. I always hate that style of play. I think you always want to be the aggressor. Once you, I think, stop trying to win and you're just trying not to lose, that's where things can unravel pretty quickly. So I think it does lead to some empty possessions. I think you do want to work clock, but I think at the same time, you still need to kind of run the offense so that it's not somebody going one-on-one and you're basically getting that Alabama game of last year over and over again of just one-on-one possessions each and every time.
Sherrell, I'm going to ask you this one from Thomas Thurman in the chat. Is there any game left on the UNC schedule where North Carolina should go back to more Bacot-centric, inside-out type work? I think we mentioned that briefly earlier, but I'll let you dive into that a little bit more if you want.
It depends on who's playing for Syracuse. I think they were pretty susceptible at the rim against UNC in the Smith Center. So when they go up to Syracuse, I wonder if that's a situation where Armando can really take advantage of things. He had it going in that game, but then he got into foul trouble. I think he had 8 points in the first 4 or 5 minutes, but he set most of the first half and part of the second half with major foul trouble. Ended up still with 16 and 11 or something like that, one of his better games. So Syracuse would be one where I would think about it, especially in an environment like that. It's going to be wild up there when they go. So that's one. And then, honestly, we can spin this forward, but I think Saturday against Duke is another opportunity because Cal Filipowski has shown a propensity of late to get into foul trouble. And I think Ryan Young, while a good defender, is not someone who North Carolina fans or Armando Bacot really fears defensively in the post. And after that leaves, I guess, Mark Mitchell, who would be the third guy to defend in the post. So if there's a situation where UNC is able to get Filipowski in foul trouble early, I think that's a time where you could really feed Bacot and he could really go to work. So think about that game and think about Syracuse. I guess those two games, and then think about Syracuse as well.
Yeah.
I think just real quick on that. I think the one thing to avoid is you want to go at Filipowski or try to get Bacot good looks because he's not going to offer. He's not going to be lively. Where once lively kind of shut Bacot down, like he was done for the game. So I don't want to put all the pressure where if he misses early, then or it's one or two possessions doesn't work out where they stop going to him because I think you're going to need to continue to feed him and at least put pressure on them down low. I think they're going to be bringing double teams and looking to get it out so they're not getting Filipowski in trouble. More Ryan Young time as well, but definitely agree with Sherrell on that in terms of making it a focus.
I'll keep my Ryan Young thoughts to myself. And I think you saw a little bit of that from Clemson when they played Duke the other night. We'll talk about the result of that game because it's not really our place in this podcast.
Well, since we're on Duke, let's just kind of go there. We're not looking over Georgia Tech. Again, fans and people who cover the team can't look past games because we don't play in the game. So let's just look Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's a tough place to play. All the cliches. They don't play well in Atlanta in any sport ever. It's going to be a tough matchup. Don't want to have a letdown, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a game that they should go in there and win. Whether or not they do, we'll see. Okay, so there's Georgia Tech done. So moving on to Duke on Saturday, I think they employed the strategy against Leaky Black for I guess 3 straight years, where basically whoever was his man, they just doubled off. They said be a free safety and roamed off of him. So the wonder is if they do that with Elliot Cadeau, and who is going to be that person who rolls off of him. I mean, if it was me, it would make a lot of sense for someone like Mark Mitchell to start on Elliot Cadeau. I know that's unconventional, but that allows him, if they're not going to respect Cadeau as a shooter, to double down on Bacot and then Harrison Ingram and those guys. It creates other mismatches, but I think, like Sean said, that might be the first time that we see it where teams really, really lay off of Cadeau. And we know that Duke has done it with players at UNC who play a lot and struggle from behind the 3-point line.
Hang on. Last question I was going to give you guys tonight anyway. So, Sherrell, you kind of walked us into that realm anyway. Not looking past Georgia Tech. You're right. We're not playing the game, so there's not really any such thing as us looking past anything. Dwayne Eason from the chat. And I like the way he phrases because this is very Sherrellian language. Question for Sherrell. Finish the sentence. Carolina beats Duke if. I love the way he said that because we've employed that 1,000 times here on the show. Sean, I'll let you take it as well, but Sherrell, I'm going to go to you first since he called you by your name.
It's the same strategy. If I were a coach, I would always employ against Duke, and maybe because they have more rounded scores or more scores than they have in the past, it won't work. But I let Filipowski, do his thing. Force feed him the ball. Let him do his thing. But I'm not going to let Mark Mitchell and Jared McCain and Jeremy Roach and Tyrese Proctor beat me, especially from deep. Because while Carolina probably has I would say the best shooter on the court in RJ Davis, probably the next 4 maybe will play for Duke in that game. So that would be my strategy: is force Filipowski into tough twos. I think Armando is up to the challenge. Harrison Ingram could probably help a little bit too. But then I would make those other guys beat me from outside. That would be the strategy. No doubles, and just see if Filipowski can beat you. I don't think he can do it by himself. Just stop him and choke everything else out.
All right, Sean, I'll come to you, and I'm impressed that Sherrell didn't mention old face Caleb Foster, because that name certainly would have come up too. Sean, go ahead, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think when you look at Duke, you've seen Filipowski's improvement from the 3-point line. They're top 25. Pretty much everybody besides Mark Mitchell is above 35-40%. So normally you'd say, okay, well, we know Mark Mitchell is going to hit a few, or he hits some big shots like he did last year. In my mind, it's keeping Proctor from getting into the paint or into 12 to 8 feet like he did time and time again, where he was able to get comfortable and get into that, not all the way to the basket, but get to the basket. So I think defensively, just making sure they're putting pressure on him, and then offensively, I thought Duke did play really strong, almost pack line-esque defense last year. Obviously easier when you're playing 3-on-5 for the most part. So I think if UNC is able to run their offense and look to get good shots and have an offensive flow, that will just kind of create a difference that maybe Duke was used to last year. And if Cormac and Ingram are able to hit some threes, that will open things up and alleviate some of the pressure. You know, they're going to be hounding RJ. He's going to get his, but you're going to have those guards going to be all over him, and they're going to, I think, between Armando doubling him and Elliot trying to do something of playing off of him pretty significantly. You know, there's going to be some um, some hurdles that need to come over. So I think just playing efficiently offensively and keeping Proctor out of that inside that free throw line from 5 to 12 feet.
Yeah, I think
Definitely.
you guys both.
Sorry, Joe. I was gonna say it could be a big Trimble game, just because Duke has played three guards a decent amount with McCain, with Roach, and with Proctor, and I think Seth is the only one of the guards really. I guess Cormac Ryan too, but Seth has that athletic ability and athleticism to stay in front of Proctor, and plus we've seen Elliot Cadeau how the offense looks at times when he gets in foul trouble and has to go out, like it happened against
Yeah.
Florida State in the second half, and you just got to think that again, if you're reading the scouting report, if there's a Proctor Cadeau matchup that, like Sean said, he's going to take him into the paint and try to just shoot over the top.
I love both of the answers, or the answers that both of you guys gave. I do realize that North Carolina's on a really rarely precedented high right now. They're playing incredibly well. Just a lot of positive mojo around the program. But I just want to tell folks, like Sherrell said earlier, Duke's got some scores. I know they have not looked great at times. I know they needed a bailout against Clemson. They lost at home to Pitt. I get all that. Duke still has talent. Let's not go to a place to where we think there's going to be an absolute skull dragging in the Smith Center. It may end up being that way, but I would caution folks walking in expecting that, because as our guy Jay Billis always says, that's right, he's our guy. I just Corey Alexander Jay Billis. As Jay Billis says it, they always deliver, both teams in this rivalry. Fellas, before we get out of here, I need 2 pennies from each of you. As you know, we like to call this segment Our 2 Cents, brought to you by Congruity HR. It is brought to you by Congruity HR, just a great supporter of Inside Carolina content. If you own or operate a small or medium-sized business, we want you to check out Congruity. Go to congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. What they're going to do is they're going to give you an assessment for free, gratis, the low, $0.99, right? Like they're not going to charge you. They're going to let you go in there and get an assessment of your business, and they'll tell you how they can help you optimize. They'll tell you how they can help make some more and find some more efficiencies for your business around benefits, around human resources, around the things that usually are a big time suck for a business owner or a business manager, and allow you to go back to doing the things that are the most profitable, that allow you to grow, that help you scale, all that stuff. So we want you to support Congruity the way they support us. CongruityHR.com/Tar Heels. Go get that assessment for your business. If they cannot help you, they will say, hey, we cannot help you. And then you've just done a good thing by paying it forward to an organization that supports your content that you get here on Inside Carolina. We want you to take care of them, and we assure you they will take care of you or your small or medium-sized business. Congruity HR. Sean, I'm coming to you first. Give me your 2 cents, brought to you by Congruity HR.
All right. So I'm going to ask for something. Can I give one? We go to Sherrell and then come back, because I don't want to step on Sherrell.
Oh, my man's trying to do a walk-off shot here, Sherrell. You going to let him?
Okay. Well, I'll do one. One is going to be 2. Is another segment we call reading. So my favorite number, conference only defensive efficiency. UNC is at 89.1 points per 100 possessions, which is really good. It's so good that it's the highest number, granted only through 9 games, since UVA in 2018. They were exactly 89.1. The hope is that UNC season doesn't end like UVA's that year, but 89.1. So that's again showing you the level of defense Carolina's playing.
I'm sorry. Anytime I hear a reference to UVA basketball, I immediately have a really strong gag reflex. So my apologies, Sherrell. Sean, go ahead with your the first of your 2 pennies, sir.
Well, that's why I wanted Sherrell to go first, because I was thinking on the same wavelength, but I know he's the conference only. But so if you look at UVA, but you can also go back to the whole KenPom era, which goes back to '99, and I believe that number is tied for third in the ACC, where you have Duke in '99, and then you have three other just UVA teams. So obviously, there's still a lot more of the ACC to go. You've seen it, I think, trend from I think it was in the '82s early on to '89. So you're seeing it slowly revert, but at the same time, still playing extremely well. So that's why I wanted Sherrell to go first on that one. But I think right now they have been playing at a historic conference pace defensively.
All right, Sherrell, your second of your two pennies, sir.
This is a combo penny. Let's call it a nickel.
Oh, man.
Recruiting wise, Saturday UNC is expecting a few visitors. Caleb Wilson, a top 5 hybrid forward in the 2025 class, will be on campus or is expected on campus, as well as Jasper Johnson, who's in for an official visit. He is a guard in the 2025 class, also a top 10 player. You have to assume Drake Powell, season ticket holder, will be there too. And then there will probably be some other guys who make it. We'll try to have a full list out Wednesday or Thursday. And the last thing I wanted to say was that Harrison Ingram, always going back to him and comparing his numbers to Stanford. So 2022, his freshman year, he made 36 threes in 32 games. 2023, his sophomore year, he made 36 threes in 33 games. This year at UNC, in 20 games, he's already made 34. So more than likely in the next 2 games, he'll pass his single season high with probably 15, 16, maybe 17, 18, 19 games left. So it shows you just how he stepped it up from his first 2 years at Stanford.
Hoping my guy doesn't have some sort of like fetish with the number 36. That would not be good for UNC down the stretch. Love that number though, man. I love where you guys find these things. It's all right. So we're gonna tee up Sean real nice here, right? I think Sean won the last shot, so far away.
No, it wasn't the last shot. It was more I didn't want to step on Sherrell's toes with the defensive.
No, you've got the last shot now, sir. I need you to step up and hit it.
So one thing on Harrison Ingram, I think the 3-point shooting is a big difference. Obviously, the offensive or both offensive and defensive rebounding. But if you're on KenPom and you look at both his in-season play this year and last year, the numbers are very similar in not a great way in terms of a average offensive efficiency and some other numbers. So once again, I think we always keep mentioning to watch him and how he continues to play. 3 of 4 from 3 was big, as was once again key plays in different areas. But I'd say the other true penny is on Saturday. Really this week. So not looking ahead at Georgia Tech and Duke, but what is UNC going to get out of the bench from a points perspective? They got I think 4 points from Washington and Wojcik against Florida State, but Trimble struggled. So what will they get this week? Because I think that's going to be important in terms of not just what they're producing, but when are those minutes coming, and then how is UNC doing in those minutes? Are they up and they're giving up a lead, or are they, around even and now they're behind? So I think that's going to be a big impact, especially Saturday, where you can't really afford to give up big runs or go long periods without scoring.
I mean, you knocked it down, dude. I know what I'm going to be watching now in both games this week is how does that bench show up and what situational tries are they given? What do they look like and what do they do? All right, I understand now that Sherrell wants to come back out on the court and get some shots after the horn's already been blown. So sure, sir, I will open the court up to you. We will shoo all of the photographers and trainers and media away from the court and allow you one more crack at it.
No, there's always that one reporter who's left. He takes the picture of Sherrell on his computer on the grind.
Court,
look at him 45 minutes after the game taking jump shots. He's so committed.
Still in here writing quotes.
Right. No, what I was going to say is I'm sure we'll talk about it next Sunday, but I mean, if there's a way that they go 2-0 this week, I mean, they would be 11-0 in conference. They'd be up 3 or 4 games with 9 left. So I mean, they could make a real huge dent on the rest of the conference, and it'd be even more in the driver's seat than they are a week from today if they're able to take care of business in these 2 games. And I know people think that's jinxing, but 11-0 with likely Duke, 11-0 with Duke likely with 3 losses or maybe 4, depending on what happens tomorrow night, and UNC having a win over the next 4 teams behind them in the rankings would be a really commanding lead in the ACC.
And I can't wait for all the think pieces about everybody saying why North Carolina walking through the ACC is bad for the conference, because I guarantee you somebody will come up with a hot take factory, or somebody's hot take factory will come up with that headline, because they will say that North Carolina is destroying the league rankings.
One game at a time. One game at a time with this team.
Fellas, I appreciate y'all so much. Shout out to almost 350 folks that were a part of this show tonight. We appreciate each and every one of y'all jumping in on a live show. We won't always do these live, but we felt like we had the stars aligned, and I do mean Sherrell and Sean are stars, to make this work tonight. So I appreciate everybody working us into their schedule. I appreciate John Siegley producing. Appreciate Johnny T-shirt Congruity for sponsoring this show. Until next time, for Sherrell McMillan, for Sean Moran, I am Joey Powell for Inside Carolina. We will talk to all of you in the very near future.